This one was angry and early. "Damn it," he muttered, looping the wire tighter. "Couldn't wait till morning, could ya?" The old bay gelding grazing behind him flicked its tail, unimpressed. "Yeah, I know, Duke. We best hurry." Eli's movements were quick and practiced, hammering the last nail, wiping sweat and dust from his brow. His shirt clung to his back, his hat already damp with the first mist. He was 22, though the lines around his eyes made him look older. The kind of boy folks said was born tired, but steady, too steady. When he finally tugged Duke's reins and turned toward the barn, the whole sky split open with light. Thunder cracked. The horses whinnied inside their stalls. And that's when he heard it. Faint at first. A rhythm that didn't belong to the storm. Hoofbeats. Fast. Unsteady. Wild. Eli froze. Now who in God's country'd be riding in this mess? The rain came down harder, flattening the dust into red mud. He stepped to the edge of the pasture, hand shading his eyes. Through the blur of water and lightning, something white moved across the valley. At first, he thought it was a stray sheet of cloth blown from a wagon. Then it screamed. The sound sliced through wind and thunder alike. A woman's scream, sharp, desperate, real. Without thinking, Eli threw himself onto Duke's back. "Hi-yah!" The horse bolted, hooves pounding against the soaked earth as Eli urged him toward the sound. The world narrowed, flashes of lightning, the sting of rain, the rush of cold air. He could barely see 10 yards ahead, but he rode by instinct, following the shape that kept appearing and disappearing between streaks of light. Then a bolt of lightning lit up the whole plain, and for a single impossible second, the world went white. That's when he saw her. A woman in a wedding dress, galloping full speed down the ridge, veil streaming behind her like a flag of surrender. Her horse was half mad with fear, eyes rolling, hooves slipping on the wet slope. "Whoa there!" Eli shouted. "Pull up!" But she didn't hear him. Or maybe she couldn't. The wind tore the words apart. Her horse stumbled once, twice, then lost footing completely. The animal crashed sideways, throwing her into the mud. She rolled, hit the ground hard, and didn't move. Eli was off his saddle before Duke even stopped. He grabbed the reins of the panicked white mare, speaking low, steady, the kind of voice horses listen to even in chaos. "Easy now, easy, girl. Ain't no one hurting you." When the horse calmed, Eli dropped to his knees beside the fallen woman. Her gown was soaked, plastered to her skin, torn at the hem. One shoe was missing, the other dangled from her ankle by a ribbon. "Hey," he said softly, brushing wet hair from her face. "You hear me, miss?" Her lashes fluttered, mud streaked her cheeks. And then, barely audible beneath the storm, she whispered, "Don't let them find me." Eli blinked. "Who?" But her eyes rolled back. She went limp. He hesitated only a heartbeat before scooping her into his arms. She was light, fragile as a secret. The veil tangled around his sleeve as he carried her toward the barn, boots sinking deep into the mud. Inside, the warmth of the small oil lamp greeted them like an old friend. Eli laid her carefully on a pile of dry hay, stripped off his soaked jacket, and draped it over her shoulders. Rain hammered the roof, echoing like drums in the dark. For a long moment he just stared, half to make sure she was breathing, half because he'd never seen anything like her. She wasn't from around here, that much was plain. Her hair was curled and pinned, the kind of style only town women bothered with. Her dress, though torn, was fine silk, embroidered with tiny pearls. And her face, even covered in rain and dirt, She looked like the kind of woman you'd find on painted postcards, not lying unconscious in a rancher's barn. Eli ran a rough hand through his damp hair. "What in God's name did I just ride into?" Duke neighed softly from his stall. The storm outside grew heavier, drowning out thought. Eli poured a little water into a tin cup and placed it beside her. Then he crouched by the stove, striking a match to light the kindling. The flames caught, throwing a soft glow that painted gold across her pale skin. He pulled up a stool and watched her chest rise and fall. She breathed fast at first, then slower, steadier. A cut ran along her wrist. He wrapped it with a clean cloth torn from his shirt. When he looked up again, her eyes were open. They were the color of green glass after rain. Bright, trembling, but sharp. Where am I?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "Willow Creek Ranch," Eli said quietly, "about 6 miles from town." She tried to sit up, winced, and lay back again. "You shouldn't have brought me here," she murmured. "They'll come." "They? You mean your people?" Her eyes darted toward the door. "No, his men." Eli frowned. "Whose men?" She looked at him, panic flickering behind her lashes. "Please, don't tell anyone you saw me." He leaned back slowly, resting his forearms on his knees. "You got a name, miss?" After a pause, she whispered, "Clara." "All right then, Miss Clara. You're safe for now. No one's coming through this storm tonight." She searched his face for deceit, but found none. Something in his voice, that calm steadiness, settled her trembling for the first time. "I don't deserve your kindness," she said. I didn't know where else to go." Eli gave a small half-smile. "Ain't about deserving. You needed help. That's all there is." The words were simple, but they landed heavy. For the first time in hours, Clara exhaled fully, a sound almost like surrender. As the night deepened, the storm began to quiet. The roof still dripped. The horses shifted in their stalls. Eli poured her a bit of hot coffee from his kettle and handed it to her in a tin mug. She sipped, wincing at the bitterness, but nodded in thanks. He studied her a while before asking, "That dress of yours, was there supposed to be a wedding today?" Her fingers tightened on the mug. "Yes," she said finally, voice barely audible. "There was. Guessing it didn't end the way folks hoped." "No." She met his eyes. "I ran before he could put the ring on." Eli didn't press. He just nodded, chewing on the inside of his cheek. "You running from a man like that usually means he ain't the kind worth marrying." She looked away. "He's powerful, dangerous, the kind that owns people and believes he owns me." Outside, thunder rumbled one last time like distant applause. Eli stood, walked to the barn doors, and looked out into the darkness. Through the sheets of rain, he thought he saw something flicker. A light, then another, torches maybe, far, but moving. He returned to her, voice low. "You telling me he'll come after you?" Her silence was enough. He reached for his rifle, leaning by the stall. "Then I best be ready." Clara watched him check the chamber, his movements quick and quiet. There was no fear in his face, just the calm resignation of a man used to standing between danger and something fragile. She whispered, "You'd risk your life for a stranger?" He didn't answer right away. The lantern light caught his jawline, the faint scar running beneath his ear. Small reminders that he'd seen worse. Finally, he said, "Guess that's just the way I was raised. If the good Lord drops somebody in your path, you don't ask why. You just hold the reins till the storm passes." For the first time, Clara smiled, weak, tired, but real. The wind outside shifted again, carrying faint echoes of horses on the move. Eli's gaze hardened. Storm's not the only thing coming, Miss Clara. She clutched the blanket tighter around herself. He won't stop until he finds me. He glanced back at her. Then he'll have to go through me first. The rest of the night stretched long. Eli sat near the door, rifle across his lap, watching shadows crawl across the walls while the rain softened to drizzle. Clara drifted in and out of uneasy sleep, waking each time the horses stirred. When dawn finally broke, the valley was wrapped in silver mist. Outside, the world smelled of wet soil and fresh beginnings. But for Eli Carter and the runaway bride lying in his barn, it was the quiet before a different kind of storm. The first light of dawn spilled across the valley like melted gold. It touched the edges of the barn roof, glinted off the wet fields, and woke the tired earth from its night-long shivering. The storm was gone, but the air still smelled of secrets. Inside the barn, Eli Carter sat in the same wooden chair he'd occupied all night. His hat hung low over his eyes, rifle resting across his lap. The lantern beside him had burned to a soft orange glow. He hadn't slept. Not for a minute. Not after hearing those riders somewhere in the dark, far but too close for comfort. Now, in the thin stillness of morning, the world was holding its breath. A soft rustle came from the corner where Clara lay wrapped in a blanket. Eli lifted his head. Her eyes were open again, clearer this time, but uncertain, cautious. She looked at him for a long while before speaking. "You didn't ask my name," she said quietly. Eli set the rifle aside and leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Figured you'd tell me when you were ready." Something about that answer softened her shoulders. People didn't usually wait on her readiness. They demanded it. "My name's Clara Weston," she said finally. He gave a small nod. Eli Carter. The air between them thickened, like both were weighing whether to trust it. Then Clara broke eye contact, fingers fidgeting with the frayed lace at the edge of her dress. "You should have left me where you found me," she murmured. "You don't know what kind of trouble you just invited to your doorstep." Eli gave a short, humorless laugh. "Ma'am, trouble don't usually knock. It just moves in uninvited. I got used to that a long time ago." Her lips quirked despite herself. "You make it sound like an old friend." He shrugged. "Guess I've shared breakfast with worse." A moment passed before Eli stood and went to the small stove. He poured some water from the kettle into a dented tin pot, dropped in a pinch of ground beans, and waited for the smell of coffee to rise through the barn. Clara sat up slowly, wincing as she did. Her gown was nearly dry now, though stained and torn. In the early light, the silk shimmered faintly, like it didn't belong in the dust and hay around her. Eli poured 2 cups, handed one to her. "Careful, hot." She took it with both hands, eyes watching him over the rim as she sipped. It was bitter, too strong, but something about it steadied her. "You live out here alone?" she asked. "Mostly," Eli said. "I work the north side of the ranch. Keep watch, mend fences, tend the horses. Ain't much company except the animals." "And you prefer it that way?" He gave a half smile. "Less people, less lies." Her fingers froze around the mug. He didn't notice right away. Or maybe he did, but decided not to push. "What about you?" he asked, glancing at her. "You from town?" Clara hesitated. "From Hollow Point," she said at last. "My father owns the Weston estate. Maybe you've heard of it." Eli leaned back. "Can't say I mingle much with estate folk." "Good," she said softly. You're better off that way." Her voice carried something brittle, not pride, but regret. After a moment, she added, "My father, he arranged my marriage." Eli's brow furrowed. "Arranged, huh? That another way of saying you didn't get a say?" She gave a small, humorless laugh. "Something like that." He didn't press. The silence between them wasn't empty, it was alive, full of words neither of them wanted to say out loud. Finally, Clara looked toward the open barn door. "He's not a good man, Eli. The man I was supposed to marry. You can't reason with him. He's used to owning everything. Land, cattle, people." Eli's eyes narrowed. "What's his name?" She hesitated, as though saying it might summon him. "Wade Hollister." The sound of that name hit Eli like a hammer. He knew that name. Everybody in 3 counties did. Wade Hollister, the man with more cattle than conscience, whose ranch hands carried guns quicker than they carried wages, the one who'd bought up half the valley, burned out families that couldn't pay him back, and had the sheriff in his pocket like loose change. "You're saying you ran from Wade Hollister?" Eli asked slowly. Clara's eyes filled with something raw. "I ran from being his wife." Eli stood, walking to the door, staring out across the waking plains. He could see his breath in the cold morning air. For a long while, neither of them spoke. Then, quietly, Clara said, "He'll send men after me. He always does. They'll search every ranch, every shack, every road until they find me." He turned back, jaw tightening. "Well, they ain't found you yet." "But they will." Her voice broke slightly. "You don't understand. He doesn't lose." Eli picked up his hat, pulled it low over his eyes, and said simply, "Then I guess I'll be his first." The words startled her. "Why would you risk your life for someone you just met?" He paused in the doorway, silhouetted by the light. "'Cause sometimes you don't help people for who they are," he said. "You help them for who they might have been if life wasn't so damn cruel." Later that morning, the storm clouds drifted west and the sun returned, harsh, white, relentless. Eli led Duke out of the barn, saddling him up while Clara watched from the doorway. She'd managed to clean herself a little, braid her hair, and cut the train off her ruined gown to make it easier to walk. "You think you can ride?" he asked. "I think I can try." "Good. We'll head to the ridge before noon. There's an old miner's cabin there. Nobody goes near it no more, not since the collapse. It's quiet, hidden. You can stay there till I figure something else." She nodded, hesitant. "You've already done too much for me, Eli." He adjusted the saddle straps. "Ain't no such thing as too much when you're doing the right thing." When she climbed onto Duke, her hands brushed his shoulders. She felt the warmth of his skin even through the rough fabric of his shirt. For a moment, her breath caught. Not from fear this time, but from something gentler, unexpected. As Duke began to walk, Clara looked back at the barn, at the little world that had, for one night, kept her alive. The open fields stretched endlessly before them, green and gold under the rising sun. Birds wheeled overhead, singing like they didn't know the world could be cruel. For the first time in days, she let herself breathe. But peace is a short-lived visitor in a place like Willow Creek. By midday, the sun had climbed high, and the dust clung to their skin. They stopped by a small stream under a cottonwood tree. Eli filled a canteen and handed it to her. She took a sip, then asked, "You ever been in love, Eli?" The question caught him off guard. He looked at her, really looked, at the way her hair caught the light, the faint bruise near her temple, the loneliness hiding behind her calm. "No," he said after a while. Came close once. But out here, love's a luxury most men can't afford. She smiled faintly. Then maybe I envy you. He raised an eyebrow. You? Envy me? I thought love was what I wanted most, she said quietly. Turns out freedom feels a whole lot like love, too. Eli didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence between them said everything. They rode again, following the dry ridge trail that wound through the hills. The land shifted from open grass to rocky slopes. Shadows lengthened. The cabin came into view at last. Small, weathered, and almost forgotten. Eli dismounted first, helping Clara down. She stumbled slightly, and his hands caught her by the waist, steadying her. For a moment, neither moved. Her heartbeat was quick against his palm. He pulled away gently. You're safe here. Clara looked around. Safe, she repeated. That word used to mean something different. Here it means no one's watching. She met his gaze. Except you. He smirked slightly. Guess I'll make an exception. Inside, the cabin was dusty but dry. Old shelves leaned against cracked walls. A half-burned lamp sat near the window. Eli built a small fire while Clara explored, touching the faded photo of a family left behind, a woman, a man, 2 children smiling in black and white. Do you think they were happy? She asked softly. Eli looked up from the firewood. Maybe once. Happiness don't last long out here unless you hold on to it with both hands. And love? She whispered. Does that last? He poked the fire, watching the sparks rise. Love's like the wind. You can't see it, can't hold it, but you damn sure know when it's gone. Their eyes met through the firelight, something unspoken burning between them. Something neither had the right to name. The wind outside shifted again. A low whinny echoed in the distance. Eli stiffened. He went to the window, far beyond the ridge, through the blur of heat and dust. 3 dark figures were riding slow but steady, following a trail. Riders, he said quietly. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. He's found me. Eli turned, face hardening. Get ready. We ain't staying here tonight. But where? He grabbed his rifle. Anywhere but here. Go pack what you got. Outside, the sun began to sink behind the hills, bleeding gold across the valley. Clara stood frozen for a moment at the doorway, watching the man who'd saved her move with quiet precision. No panic, no fear, just purpose. And in that moment, she realized something she hadn't expected. She wasn't just running anymore. She was following. Evening came slow that day, the kind of slow that makes the air feel heavy. The heat had drained from the land, leaving a stillness that was both calm and cruel. The world seemed to be holding its breath, waiting for something it already knew would hurt. Eli Carter stood outside the old cabin, watching the horizon fade from gold to red. His hat was pulled low, his rifle hanging loosely at his side. Beside him, Clara Weston paced the porch, wringing her hands as if she could squeeze the fear out of her bones. He had seen this look before, on horses before a storm, and men before a gunfight. Fear doesn't always make you weak. Sometimes it just reminds you that you've got something to lose. How far you think they are? Clara asked. Eli tilted his head, listening to the wind. Maybe a mile, maybe less. She froze. Then they'll be here soon. He turned to her, calm as ever. Ain't the first time trouble came knocking. Won't be the last. She stared at him, confused by how unshaken he was. You talk like you've already accepted it. Eli gave a faint smile. I stopped arguing with fate a long time ago. He turned and began checking his rifle, loading rounds, wiping the barrel clean, his movements slow and deliberate. Every click and snap echoed through the tiny cabin like a countdown. Clara watched, her eyes glistening. "Eli, if they find me, they'll kill you." He didn't look up. "If I don't stand up, I ain't much of a man to begin with." The words hit harder than gunfire. Inside the cabin, the lamp flickered weakly. The walls were thin, the air thick with smoke and unspoken things. Clara stood near the table, clutching a folded piece of paper she'd kept hidden in her dress. She didn't know why she still had it, maybe because it was the last thing that tied her to the world she'd just escaped. "Eli," she said suddenly. He turned mid-loading. "Yeah? There's something I need to tell you before they get here." His brows drew together. "Make it quick, then." She swallowed hard, the words clawing at her throat. "Wade Hollister isn't just the man I ran from. He's my husband." Eli froze. The room fell silent except for the crackle of the fire. "You mean—" "We were married yesterday morning," she said quickly, voice breaking. "But I ran before the ceremony ended. I couldn't go through with it. I couldn't let him own me like he owned everything else. My father forced it. Her breath hitched. He owed Wade money, so he gave me instead." Eli's jaw flexed. "You should have told me from the start. I was afraid you'd turn me in." He looked at her, not with anger, but something deeper, something that hurt worse. "Clara, I ain't the kind of man that trades mercy for safety." Tears filled her eyes. "I know that now, but you have to understand, he'll kill anyone who stands between us." Eli stepped forward slowly, his voice steady. "Then he'll have to go through me first." The first gunshot came before she could speak again, a sharp crack that shattered the window beside them. Glass scattered across the floor like diamonds. Clara screamed. Eli pushed her to the ground, ducking low. "Down!" he barked, crawling toward the door. He peeked through a gap in the wood. 3 riders, just like he'd guessed. Wade Hollister's men. They moved slow, confident. The kind of confidence that comes from believing you already own the ending. Eli fired once, clean and precise. One man dropped. The others scattered behind rocks, shouting curses. "Stay here," he said, voice low. "No, Eli—" But he was already outside. The desert wind screamed as he stepped into the open. Dust kicked up around his boots. His rifle glinted under the dying light. For a moment, he looked like something carved out of the land itself. Quiet, weathered, and ready to bleed if he had to. "Eli Carter!" a voice boomed from the ridge. "Hand her over, and maybe we'll leave you a grave worth digging." Eli spat into the dirt. "You tell Wade Hollister if he wants her, he can come take her himself." A cold laugh answered him. "You ain't in no place to make threats, boy." Another shot rang out. It grazed Eli's arm, a burn more than a wound, but it knocked him back against the porch post. He steadied himself, breathing hard. His eyes narrowed, and he fired again. Once, twice, 3 times, each shot echoing like thunder. One man fell, another fled into the brush. For a moment, the valley went still. Then came the sound Eli had been dreading. Another horse, a heavier one, slower, and the silhouette that appeared through the rising dust made Clara's blood turn cold. Wade Hollister. He dismounted with the ease of a man who knew every inch of this land belonged to him. His boots hit the ground with authority, his hand resting lazily on the pistol at his belt. He was tall, broad, clean-shaven, dressed in black from hat to boots. Not a speck of dust dared stick to him. "Clara," he called out, his voice smooth as poison. "You've caused quite a fuss." Eli stepped forward, rifle raised. "You best turn around, Hollister. You ain't welcome here." Wade smiled, amused. "You're Eli Carter, right? The ranch hand from Willow Creek. Heard you had more pride than sense." "Guess you heard right," Wade chuckled. "You got spirit, boy. Shame it'll get you killed." Clara ran out before Eli could stop her. "Wade, please, stop this!" Wade's grin widened. "Now there's my runaway bride." "Don't call me that," she snapped. "You don't own me." He tilted his head, mock sympathy twisting his features. "That's where you're wrong, darling. I paid for you. That makes you mine." Eli's voice cut through the air like a blade. "Ain't no man owns a woman, not while I'm still breathing." Wade's smile died. His hand dropped to his gun. The world slowed. Eli moved first. One shot. Loud, clean, final. Both men fired almost at the same time, but Eli's bullet struck true. Wade staggered backward, eyes wide, one hand clutching his chest. He looked down, surprised by the blood on his palm, then collapsed into the dirt. Eli dropped his rifle, gasping. He looked down at his side, crimson spreading fast through his shirt. Wade's bullet had found him, too. "Eli!" Clara screamed, running to him. She caught him before he fell, lowering him to the ground, his blood mixed with the dust beneath them. "You shouldn't have come out," he murmured, coughing. "Told you to stay down." She shook her head violently. "No, no, you can't leave me, you can't." He smiled weakly, his voice fading. "Guess I never was good at listening." Tears blurred her vision. "Eli, please, stay with me." He lifted a trembling hand, brushing her cheek. You got that look again." "What look?" "Like freedom." His smile faltered. "Don't you ever lose it." "Clara Weston." The last light of sunset hit his face as he took one slow, shallow breath, and didn't take another. Days later, the sheriff rode up to find Wade Hollister dead and Eli Carter buried beneath the willow tree near the creek. The townsfolk whispered about it for months. Some said Eli was a fool for getting involved. Others said he was the only real man left in the valley. But Clara never went back to Hollow Point. She sold what jewelry she had left, bought a small piece of land on the far side of Tucson, and built herself a quiet life. Every morning she'd walk out to the porch, look at the sunrise, and think of a man who taught her that courage isn't loud. Sometimes it's just doing what's right when no one's watching. Years passed. She never remarried. And one spring morning, when the wildflowers were in bloom, she planted a small tree beside her house, a young willow. She pressed her palm into the soil, tears falling freely. "If you ever make it out," she whispered, remembering his voice, "plant something green. That way, I'll know you made it." She looked up at the sky, smiling through her tears. "I made it, Eli." And for just a moment, the wind rose, gentle, warm, rolling through the valley like a sigh. The leaves of the new willow rustled softly, almost like an answer.